Motherhood is not a given for all women. For many, it's a devastating struggle coping with infertility or the inability to carry to term. So when another woman offers to be a surrogate, the emotions can be profound. I recently interviewed Wendy Brown on my podcast, a surrogate who carried a baby for a couple in her 47th year and is kindness personified. You can hear the extended podcast on What She Said with Candace Sampson on Apple and Spotify. But for today, I want to talk about surrogacy in Canada and about a few things you may not know. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you very much.
So let's get into a little bit about surrogacy in Canada. I think most surprising to me is that surrogates are not paid in Canada.
No, you can do it through, there are agencies, but I did this completely for altruistic, intentions. And but they can't, legally you cannot get paid.
Legally, you cannot get paid. Okay,
Yeah.
but so your expenses, though, so
Mhm.
you do connect with a lawyer, and your expenses are covered because, I think as a mother, you probably don't think about it, but there are a lot of expenses to being pregnant.
Yes and no. Like I said, in the podcast, I had a drug plan. So for me, they were to pay for maternity clothes, which I said, don't bother. I'll do that at Value Village. And then I can just redonate them. My drug plan covered what I needed to take, so that was fine. They did cover like ultrasounds, that sort of stuff, because of course, that's the other thing. If you are caring for somebody else, the OHIP and stuff does not cover your ultrasounds. The couple has to pay for that. If it was me carrying a baby that I had injected into myself, IVF, well, I wouldn't have injected it, but it would be covered, but because it's not my child, it was not covered.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so the couple that you carried a baby for, they hired the lawyer who drew
Yes.
up the contract.
Yep.
So what are sort of some of the things that a couple can ask of their surrogate?
I mean, honestly, they can ask anything they want, to be honest. They can limit what kind of food, your exercise, your, what your comings and goings, your travel plans, all of that sort of stuff. That's something you would have to work out with each other. For me,
were there things that you were asked not to do
yeah.
during your pregnancy? So what were some of those things?
So processed lunch meat, stuff like that, where there was obviously a risk for miscarriage, whatever, skydiving, horseback riding, dangerous sports, that sort of thing. But they were actually very, very, very accommodating with me as well. And we had a good rapport in terms of we would speak about everything. So yeah, there wasn't really, we didn't have any kind of, hard line. The only actual hard line I took was no, I wasn't getting a flu shot. That was it. Other than that, I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get their baby to them. And they were very, very accommodating to me. So it was a good thing all around, I think.
So how familiar were you with surrogacy before you decided to be a surrogate?
Not a clue. And to me, it was more, I've had babies before. How hard can it be?
In your 47th year, I would think not so easy.
It was a little more challenging. And of course, there's the flip side of it too, is the responsibility. And not to be glib or flip about it, but if you lose your own child, that's devastating. But if you lose somebody else's child through whether, an accident or doing, carelessness, whatever, that would be devastating personified. Like, it would just be so much harder because it was very difficult for me. And I was always, always, always very concerned about, if something did happen, how bad I would feel for these poor people, because to get their hopes up and then snatch it away again just would feel so cruel. So I was more careful.
Before you had, went and had this embryo implanted, what were the steps you had to go through to get to that point?
So there was hormone treatment to do, like I said, I had to take some needles in my stomach, Luprin, and then I had to do progesterone shots in the butt. I was eating extremely clean. I was exercising more so than normal because I was like, I'm going to get fat, so I want to be in healthy shape and that sort of thing. But honestly, there wasn't a lot that I had to do.
But you did have to do a psych evaluation, correct?
I had to do, yeah. So I met with like, a psychologist or whatever to make sure that, I'm not sure why. I think probably to make sure I was of sound mind, but also probably I would assume through their screening methods, they make sure you're not going to try and take off with the baby or that sort of stuff. And that was never an issue. I was definitely not interested in being.
Well, I think though that there must be, so, we talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but that when I was pregnant with my children, for example, I'm sure when you were pregnant with your daughters,
absolutely.
that you feel that instinctual pull toward the child.
Yeah.
So
and see, for me, I think it was, but for me, it was a sense of, for lack of a better word, it was a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility more so than a bond of love. I loved her. I took care of her. We talked, we watched all the true crime stories, that sort of stuff together. But it was not the same because I knew from day one it was not the same. And being in the the stage of my life I was in and stuff, me having a baby at that time in my life was never going to happen. And it wasn't I love babies. And it was for me, it was always more duty driven in that these people needed help. I wanted to help them. And it just so happened that the way to do that was giving them my uterus for a little bit. So that was, it was, that sounds really weird, I think, and maybe a little cold and clinical. It wasn't, but for me, it was always, that was in my mind. And
I think from a psychological standpoint, that's a very healthy way.
I think so too.
To approach it.
I think so too. Yeah. And I mean, like little things, my mother offered to come into the delivery room with me if I wanted her to and stuff. And I said, no, that's weird and creepy. It's not your kid. So, like stuff like that, where maybe it would have been different if I didn't have the diversified support I had, but I had so many people that were just willing to either, kick me in the butt when I needed a kick in the butt, or to, hold me up when I was kind of like, oh, what have I done? And the good thing was there wasn't a lot of, oh, what have I done moments. There really wasn't.
So what would you say to any women out there right now listening, thinking that maybe surrogacy is for them? Would you have any advice?
Yeah. If you are in a stage of your life where you're not longing for children, but you want to help somebody, absolutely do it. It is the most rewarding thing you can ever do for another set of human beings. I do. I tell the parents all the time how grateful I am and honored that they let me do this. And then we argue back and forth.
Yeah, cool. Well, I imagine they are equally as grateful to you.
They are. And sometimes it's hard to take. I mean, we're all a little, I think we all have a hard time sometimes with people saying thank you and getting excess gratitude, because you feel kind of weird about it. But yeah, I'm just as grateful to them, and sometimes more so. I get to sleep through the night. They don't.
Well, tomorrow is Mother's Day, and as we're sitting here talking about this, I am deeply aware that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be a mother.
Yes.
And so I can only imagine how this family must feel to you that you gave them that gift, especially every Mother's Day. It's absolutely beautiful, Wendy, and I am just
thank you,
blown away by you. I really hope people will pop on over to the podcast and listen to the extended podcast. Your story is incredible.
It'd be nice if there'd be lots of babies from this.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It was a real pleasure.
Wonderful.